exclusively, as a government, reaching out to the leadership of the Muslim American community. That is a leadership group for basically one reason and one reason only. And that is that through some of those organizations that I mentioned, notably the North American Islamic Trust, third group on that list, in the Muslim Brotherhood's own strategic plan, the Saudis are underwriting these groups' activities. They're putting them into a position where they have the wherewithal to be prominent, to be visible, to be highly organized. And as a result, when government agencies are told, reach out to the Muslim American community, particularly at the leadership level, and it's especially true at the FBI, these folks are reaching out to the Muslim Brotherhood. And to give you an up-to-the-minute example of how this is playing out, I wrote a column last week in the Washington Times where I started off by saying, how do you think the Cold War would have worked out if we had the KGB charged with training for countering Soviet imperialism? I don't know, but I don't think it would have come out the way it did. And yet, that is precisely what we're doing at the moment. Last week, literally last week, the Department of Homeland Security, which the White House has now given responsibility for determining who can train and how they can train those engaged with federal dollars in what they call countering violent extremism. Remember that approved euphemism? Not sufficiently innocuous for the Fort Hood business, but that's nonetheless the rubric under which the government is supposed to be doing something about this particular problem. Well, the Department of Homeland Security's new guidelines for training in countering violent extremism require those who would do such training to be vetted by community leaders. In other words, by today's KGB, by the Muslim Brotherhood. So I can't tell you how frustrating this is for the folks who are down the food chain from the leadership, some of whom we work with all the time, who see this going on, who know that we're now actually taking direction from the enemy, or at the very least giving them a pass. And yet the government is unfortunately actually doubling down in this space. They're doing it more intensively. The domination is more comprehensive. The penalties to one's career for even mentioning that you think this is lunacy are so acute that unfortunately it's really now pretty much without exception the norm that we're now either being influenced by people from outside, or in some cases we actually have them inside these agencies calling the shots. And that's toxic, obviously. Boss. There's one over here too.
My husband spoke. Can you hear me here on this?
Yes, ma'am.
So I got to talk to you. Anyway, I'm Janice Nolan, and I'm a retired judge. Now, what I'm interested in here is, you keep mentioning Paul. I guess he's a legislator. I may not know.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And a law, I guess he introduced last time, and I think I emailed somebody up there on it, because that might work. We maybe need to get all on that bandwagon. I haven't read that, but I see Marxism in our courts. It's there in our family law. So that looks like something to me that we all might be interested in. We want American law for American courts. So let him tell us how we can help him.
Right, thank you. I'm going to turn this over to Paul to explain how you can help him. Let me just say that one of the people who has led the way in all of this, in addition, of course, to Phyllis, is Bobby Petray, who you may know from her leadership role in Tennessee. And thanks to Bobby, Tennessee was the first state in the country to enact American laws for American courts. And so my hat's off to the Eagle Forum team. As always, you're at the cutting edge. Paul, what can they do to help you get this done?
Probably one of the best things. My name is Paul Kurtman. I represent Jefferson and Franklin County, the 105th district. And probably one of the biggest obstacles that I had in the last legislative session was getting enough people to make enough phone calls. Because for some of these more controversial topics, whenever you have certain people that might be running for future office, they don't want to face controversial things all the time. But putting the pressure on, getting the phone calls, getting the letters out is going to help get it to the House. That's what got it through the House last session, and that's what got it all the way through committee in the Senate, and that's what brought it to the Senate floor. Unfortunately, it was filibustered by a very, 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 very far to the left liberal state senator from the Kansas City area. But that is something that we can overcome. It's just one obstacle, but that's something that grassroots can't overcome. If you'd like more information about that, because I will be posting about that on my blog whenever I pre-file it in December, and that's just at paulkurtman.net. Thank you.
Thank you. It takes guts to do this. I think that you'll find that most Americans actually are strongly supportive. In fact, most people I find say, why would we need American laws for American courts? But as you just heard, we certainly do.
Frank, I've certainly appreciated your presentation tonight. And I would like for you to explore for us as to whether it's myth or fact about within the Muslim community there is intimidation. And the intimidation, let me give you two examples of it. One is the Saturday after 9/11, I attended a meeting in another portion of the country in which we had an imam appear and plead to us not to put all Muslims in the same category with those who were involved in 9/11. From that time till now, he has never spoken out against what's happening within the Muslim community against America. He's never spoken out against those people. The second thing is the discussion about honor killings in order to keep Muslim women in line. Could you address that intimidation within the Muslim community?
Thank you. This is a tremendously important sort of set of issues. We did a movie back in 2006, I think it was. Actually, again, you taxpayers made it possible for us to make the movie. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting gave us about $500,000 to do it, and then the Public Broadcasting Service wouldn't run it. Surprise, surprise. The movie was called Islam versus Islamists. And it was intended specifically to look at this question. If, as I believe, millions of Muslims around the world, and a great many of them here, don't want to live under Sharia, don't even know what Sharia is for that matter, let alone practice it or want to impose it on anybody else, how come we don't hear more from them? I'm sure this question has occurred to you as well, right? If there are all these moderate Muslims, why are they not heard from, seen, more visible? Well, the answer is in this question. It is a capital offense to deviate from Sharia. Under Sharia, any Muslim who believes you are deviating, can denounce you and can, with impunity, kill you for doing so as an apostate. That has a somewhat chilling effect, shall we say, on people standing up and saying, you know, I'm not for this program. In fact, you probably will recognize this name. The one guy I can think of who really has done it assiduously is a wonderful fellow by the name of Dr. Zuhdi Jasser from Arizona. If that name doesn't ring a bell, I'm sure you've seen him, because he does get a fair amount of coverage, thank God. But he's practically alone. Not entirely. He's actually been forming cohorts of people who work with him. But I'll tell you an interesting story. He was one of the lead witnesses in the set of hearings that Congressman Pete King had earlier this year, for which he was excoriated by the Muslim Brotherhood. And, by the way, by every Democrat who were reading from the Council on American Islamic Relations talking points as they denounced him for being a racist and a hate monger and a bigot and an Islamophobe and all the rest of it. But he nonetheless brought Zuhdi Jasser, an authentically moderate, or as he now calls himself, reformist Muslim, to his witness table. And I talked to Zuhdi on this radio program a couple of days later, and he said, you know, I've had thousands of Muslims contact me since I appeared on that hearing. He said, they have been, almost without exception, thanking me for giving voice to what they believe and saying they don't have anybody else who's doing that. Because they're certainly not getting that from the Council on American Islamic Relations or ISNA or NATE or any of these other groups. He said, in the space of the past 4 days, I've had more traction than I have in the past 4 years. And I think probably would have been fair to say the past 10 years, since 9/11. My point is this. There is absolutely intimidation. The Brotherhood are the prime practitioners of that. They will threaten individuals, personally, their families, their businesses, even if it's nothing more than simply ostracizing them from the community. Denying you the ability to have your daughter married in the mosque, for example. That exercises a lot of suasion. But beyond that, there's always the threat that it could be a lot worse. You could face physical violence. Which brings me to the honor killing point. Honor killings happen. It's under Sharia permissible to execute those who have sullied your family honor by deviating from the faith, or in other ways defying, the traditions. How you dress, whether you wear makeup, whether you date non-Muslim boys. Women are being killed in America under this code of Sharia.